Okay. Hey, how you doing? Okay, cool. Good to go. Now, this session, I think I actually miscounted how many. Yeah, I don't know. I've lost count of the number of episodes I'm up to, and I think I was one short with my last broadcast just a few minutes ago. We should be up to 26 now, but I'll fix it up later on. But I know it's hard. Thanks for joining me, by anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Jackie M, and I'm a Malaysian street food expert based in Sydney, Australia. And I'm going through 30 days of 30 Asian ingredients, and I'm now matching each of these ingredients with a recipe. Okay, so now today we're doing tofu, and one thing I find that's really unusual about Westerners when they think of tofu is that they generally think of hard tofu. And see, when I Google tofu, this is cool. When I Google tofu, you almost universally, this is the image of tofu that is associated with the search term, okay, which is a hard compressed kind of tofu. Now, if you're, hey, how you doing? If you're Asian like me, we pretty much grow up eating tofu and eating lots of different types of tofu as well. Now, just to give you an example, I once made tofu, a tofu and vegetable curry using what we know as tofu puffs. Okay, this is what it looks like, fried tofu puffs. I don't know how familiar you are with this. Usually this is used in laksa. I used it in a curry, and I sold it as part of my range of frozen meals. And I had some woman come back and told me there was something wrong with the tofu because it was soft and spongy. And unfortunately, she doesn't realize that tofu puffs are meant to be soft and spongy. The whole point of them is that they are kind of like, if you can imagine tofu that's been deep fried long enough, they create this kind of like a labyrinthine, spongy interior. And that's really good for soaking up all the curry flavors. So there are a lot of different types of tofu that we use in our cooking, and the way we handle them as well are quite different. I had the opportunity to pick up a couple of different varieties yesterday at my local Asian grocery store. Okay, this is what's called silken tofu, and sometimes it's called Japanese tofu. Okay, the Japanese like the tofu extremely soft, and in fact, I bought this when I was out running my business yesterday out in the outdoor, and by the end of the day, when I packed everything away, I noticed this had sort of deteriorated a little bit, so it needs a lot of fragile handling. Okay, so silken tofu is the sort of tofu that you probably find in like a miso soup or something like that. It's very soft and very silky. I think, like I said, a lot of Westerners imagine, especially the vegetarian community, take on tofu as kind of like a meat substitute. So they expect it to be sort of firm, okay? That's probably closer to what they expect it to be like, what's labeled here as pressed tofu. And again, within that, there are different types of categories as well. Sometimes you can buy them pre-fried up, and they'll be solid but brown on the outside, and you slice it up, and we use that in mee goreng and all that. This one's just called classic tofu, and different brands will have different terminology for them. Okay, usually when I buy tofu, when I order tofu, I'll ask for either what do I call them, soft tofu or hard tofu, and that's generally the two different broad categories that I would ask for. And if I want to be more specific, then I will tell them. Now, a lot of Asians, not a lot of Asians, most Asians don't attempt to make their own tofu. But if you were so inclined, back in the old day, tofu is made with soybeans, okay? So this is a bag of soybeans, and soybeans you can use to make, hi, how you doing? Soybeans you can use to make tofu, or you can make soybean milk or soybean drink. And the way you use it is you would boil it, puree it, strain it, and then you would use a kind of like a setting agent. Okay, I don't know if you can read this. This is called gypsum powder. You can buy them at your Asian grocery store. If you can't remember the name, because I always forget, it's called gypsum powder. I just tell them it's the powder for making tofu. Okay, and this is what it looks like. So you could use that. And the other thing is, if you don't want to go through the trouble of boiling and pureeing and straining your own soybeans, you can actually use soybean soybean drink that you can pick up at Asian grocery stores. When I say soybean drink, we used to call them soybean milk, except the Western Western demographic have kind of like stolen that term and used it to refer to basically non-dairy milk that they use, that's made from soybeans, okay? And that particular type of soybean milk is very different to what we Asians know as soybean milk. So we now call it soybean drink, probably, because it's a lot more diluted. But when you buy soybean drink or soybean milk at Asian grocery stores, they can be either sweetened or unsweetened. And the unsweetened variety you can use to make tofu, okay? And the way you would do it is, again, you use that bottle of soybean milk or soybean drink, and then you would set it with gypsum powder. But if you don't want to use gypsum powder, because large quantities of this isn't particularly healthy for you, apparently, I don't know, a lot of people actually use eggs, just straight eggs, okay? So you crack a few eggs into your soybean drink or soybean milk, and then you steam it, and you will get tofu out of that, okay? Now that I've covered the basics of tofu, I just want to mention that my last trip to Singapore, I had this, I wish I had the picture pulled up here. It's just going to take me, I've got like, over 10,000 photos in my photo gallery, so it's a bit of a pain to pull up. But if you look at my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/JackieM is my YouTube channel, but I've got a Singapore kind of video, Singapore food adventure video is called, and there's a picture of this tofu dish, though granted you may have trouble trying to catch it because you blink and you miss it. But essentially this particular tofu dish I ate at this kind of like an outdoor HDB housing block unit, and it's I was taken there by this gentleman by the name of Matt Heng, who's one of my followers on Facebook, who's now a Facebook friend. He and his family took me to this really fabulous seafood restaurant in this HDB housing block. And Stephen would know about HDB housing blocks. They're basically these kind of like government commissioned high-rise buildings where Singaporeans basically get to invest and live in these residential units for a very, very reasonable price. And the beauty of these HDB housing blocks is that downstairs of them, they're like virtual, like mini cities, and you get not just like restaurants, you also get like your post office, your wet market, your grocery store, your hairdresser, and all that sort of stuff. So it's perfect for older people, especially if they're living, if they're a little bit infirm or immobile, they can just kind of catch an elevator downstairs, get their hair cut, do their banking and that sort of stuff. Have their breakfast, banter with friends. So it's a very, very nice, holistic kind of like communal style living, and I love it. Okay, but there was this fabulous HDB housing block restaurant specializing in seafood, and having said seafood, one of the highlight dishes was actually this tofu dish that to me was so incredibly unusual. I'd never had it. And usually when you go to Asian restaurants, in Asia in particular, but pretty much in general, Asians are very kind of like tight-fisted with their recipes. I'm an exception to the rule, okay? So I'm always very leery about asking them, oh, how do you cook this? And what's your recipe and all that? Because they hate telling you that, because that's their livelihood, okay? They don't like to share this kind of knowledge. It's a little bit of a secret society thing as far as restaurant dishes are concerned. But this guy, he actually came and introduced himself at the end of the night, and my host managed to ask him, would you mind sharing us a little bit about your recipe, because they introduced me as like a TV presenter and food expert and whatever. And he said, oh, no problem, look, anyone ask me and I'll be more than happy to tell. And he actually told us in Mandarin, and I don't know Mandarin, he told us in Mandarin what goes into that dish. They actually make the tofu from scratch, and I'm not going to bother doing that today, but I'm just going to attempt this dish myself to see how it goes. So I'm just going to hop around the back and give it a shot. Okay, so I've got some oil that I'm going to heat up, which I should have heated up while I was talking. I meant to, and I totally spaced off. So I've got a Scanpan with oil heating up here, and this is meant to be deep frying, okay? And I'm going to use the regular classic tofu It's classic brackets regular tofu, and I'm just going to move the camera up a little bit. I'm using this kind of like a spider tripod leg thing on this, and it's very frustrating because it seems to slip around the pole that it's sitting on. Okay, that's better. Okay, cool, right here. So I'm going to use this classic tofu thing, and I'll just open it up. I might actually off air try it with a different type of tofu. But essentially what this dish looked like to me, it looked like a big giant like cake of tofu that had been fried up, and it had this what looks like a huge flowering topping. It was really, really unusual, brown floury topping. And I had no idea. I kind of figured that it had radish in it, preserved radish, which I've covered in some of my previous episodes. Okay. But wasn't quite sure what else goes into it, so I'll just quickly go through the ingredients. I'm using minced preserved radish, and he actually specifically said, I don't know if you remember the episode where I mentioned there are a couple of different types of minced preserved radish. There's a version that's more salty than sweet. They both have, they should have a bit of sugar in both varieties of this particular brand that I use anyway, which is from Thailand. I'll just hold it up for you so you can see it. For my business, I use the one that's sweet, okay, that's predominantly sweet. And this is what it looks like. This is from Thailand, okay, minced preserved radish. Hopefully you can see it. This particular brand, like I said, they come in two varieties. The ones with the blue label are the sweeter version, and the one with the yellow label is more salty. So I have made a mistake of getting the wrong type before. And usually, in theory, you should rinse it before you use it, just to wash off some of the residual stuff, and also just to kind of like temper the flavor a little bit. So I've rinsed this and just kind of like strained it a little bit. And I've got some garlic here, and I've got some minced dried shrimp, and that too was covered in a previous episode. Okay, so that's a dried shrimp. If you just Google dried shrimp, you should be able to see what it looks like. Okay, and this has been soaked and then minced, and then I've kept it in my fridge for a few weeks now. And I've got the oil going, and what I want is to first deep fry the tofu. And it's quite unusual because he didn't just drench the tofu in flour. You need to drench it with a bit of flour to usually just absorb some of the moisture in it. And this is just tapioca flour. He mentioned, thankfully Matt Heng, as do all Singaporeans, understood Mandarin, because like I said, I don't understand Mandarin. Matt Heng actually emailed me the recipe based on his memory of that conversation. So all this hinges on Matt's memory of the conversation and accuracy as far as remembering the details. But he said, the gentleman called it windmill flour. Okay, I've never heard of windmill flour. Matt Heng did a little bit of research. He said he found out that windmill flour was just potato flour, potato starch, okay? And I don't have that either, so I'm using tapioca flour, which should essentially have the same characteristics about it, okay? So he says some windmill flour with some water added to make into a paste, and then what you want to do, and usually with tofu, by the way, out of the packet, they'll have a little bit of liquid in them, okay? So you just want to strain them a little bit. Okay, I've just tipped it upside down in the out of the box, okay, and I'm just kind of coating it with this mixture of tapioca starch and water, and I think I'm going to add a bit more tapioca starch to it because I've got a feeling this is going to split really badly in its current form. Okay, the oil sounds like it's about ready. And he says the oil should not be too hot, and Matt says that based on his interpretation, maybe about 160 degrees Celsius in temperature would be about right. So I'm just going to deep fry this for a bit. And it's just so extremely delicate that it's starting to fall apart already just by virtue of my transferring it. Just give me a second. Okay, so while that's deep frying, I want to show you what happens with the radish, okay? The radish, as it stands, looks like this. So minced preserved radish that's been soaked. Okay, and what he wants you to do, what he wants you to do is to deep fry the radish, and I might transfer some of the oil in here over to this other pan so you can actually see how it looks while I'm cooking it, okay? I'm just using enough oil here just to be able to fry it up properly, so I don't need to completely sink it in oil. But the way the gentleman made the tofu was with, like I said, the soybean, and also with a dozen eggs. And the tofu itself that we had wasn't huge, it was probably about that size. So you can imagine a dozen eggs going into like a square of tofu, and that's a lot of eggs. But eggs, like I said, are healthier than gypsum powder. Okay, so I'm just heating some oil and I'm going to fry this up. And he says you want to fry this till it opens up like flower buds, and they turn white, okay? So this is just heating up a little bit. And this is frying. I'm just going to flip this upside down because I don't have quite enough oil in this to be able to flip it, to be able to cook it all around. Probably should have put more oil in it because it's so delicate, I worry about breaking it up. So I might just kind of like bar some oil over the top just to let it hold its shape a little bit until it's firmer, and then I'll flip it then. Okay, so this is just starting to fry up, and at the end of it, the radish from a brown color, I want it to look pretty much completely white. Someone sent me some Scanpans, and now someone needs to send me some utensils that are heat resistant, because I'm killing all my utensils at the moment. You see how it's spitting? I don't know if you can see it or hear it, but it's spitting quite vigorously because I didn't strain the water out of the radish when I by much at all. I just kind of like just took it out. So I probably should have strained it a little bit more, but it's just turning white now, like how I want it. Okay, I'm just trying to see how that's going. And let's see if I can flip this. I've never made this, like I said, so hopefully this will turn out fine. And the other thing I want to point out as well with Malaysian or Singaporean cooking or Singaporean food, there's quite a distinct difference between street food and restaurant food, okay? So generally when you travel overseas or when you move overseas and you go to a Malaysian restaurant, people generally expect, being a Malaysian restaurant, their exposure to Malaysian food generally would be like the kind of street food they came across when they last visited Penang or KL, so they might be familiar with char kway teow, with curry puff and all that sort of stuff. Those are not restaurant food in Malaysia. Whereas a lot of the Malaysian restaurants opened by restaurateurs here, if they have Malaysian chefs, usually their chefs come from Malaysian restaurants in Malaysia. So their specialty are not necessarily Malaysian street food. Unlike me, my specialty is street food, okay? So there is a big difference between what they know how to do and what is expected of them overseas when they're running a quote-unquote Malaysian restaurant. You know, invariably, if they don't have char kway teow and they don't have curry puff and they don't have nasi lemak, people think, oh, they can't be Malaysian because that's all authentic. What Malaysian restaurant doesn't have all those dishes? But when they do put them on, I think a lot of the time they fall short because that's not their specialty. In Malaysia, the street food cooks are very, very targeted in terms of their skill set and their knowledge. They might have spent their entire career cooking just one dish, okay? They might have spent their entire career just cooking Hainanese chicken rice, and that's all they know. Whereas when they come to Australia, they can't really survive or actually have the same kind of like opportunities as a restaurant cook who knows how to do like 20, 30 different dishes, okay? So when you go to a restaurant in Australia, run by Malaysian, either you look for one run by me, because like I said, my specialty is in fact street food, but generally the restaurant owners here in Australia, who are Malaysian, their specialty would be just Malaysian restaurant food, okay? Which is what this tofu is. This tofu you will not find in a Jalan Alor or any kind of like street food setting in Malaysia, okay? But yeah, most restaurant cooks here in Australia or most places, they don't know how to cook char kway teow the way you would expect char kway teow to taste, you know, because it's a very specific skill set, and they may not make the best Hainanese chicken rice, they may not make the best nasi lemak, because that's not what they were trained to cook, and that's not what their specialty is. And when you think of restaurant food, you're talking about like chili crab and something like this tofu thing, and that sort of stuff, okay? So it is very different. This is spinning so much, I'm going to turn it off, but I've managed to get some of it like a white color, but it's spinning so much I didn't want to put up with any more spinning, so this will do for me. And to the radish, I'm going to add a pinch of the fried shrimp, and I'm going to add some garlic. We're quite sure that, I thought I tasted garlic in their dish, but I think the gentleman said that's up to you, but he didn't actually put any in his. I do like my garlic anyway, so I'm going to throw some in. Okay. This is a big chunk. Yeah, when you think Malaysian street food, you think satays and that sort of stuff. A regular Malaysian restaurant in Australia and probably in most parts of the world, like their satay would not be their signature ingredient, signature menu item, okay? If they have it, it's because they know the customers are going to complain that there's no satay on their menu, okay? It's not because they necessarily know the secret to making good satay. So I'm just frying these up now. And I'm going to take it out and put it aside, because the next thing I'm going to do is make some sauce to go over everything, okay? The tofu is still frying. And all this is going to get assembled in the one dish afterwards, so I'm just wanting to move on to the next portion of this dish. So that's the radish and dried shrimp topping over here. And now I want to make the sauce, and the sauce will have some water. Some chicken stock granule, a bit of sugar. I'm not measuring anything, we weren't given any kind of exact quantities or whatever, it's just trial and error. And some oyster sauce, this is another brand of oyster sauce I picked up. I picked this up last week, okay? If you followed my oyster sauce episode, you would know I mentioned about how different grades of oyster sauce have different amounts of actual oyster extract in it. This one has 45%. I showed one a couple of weeks ago that had 40% that I thought was probably about as high as it goes. This one actually has 45%, so it's got more. This is from Thailand, and it's actually a couple of bucks cheaper than the other one as well. This is about $4. The other one I bought was nearly $6. And also, but because it's from Thailand, I think it's got a little bit more sweetness to it than the other brand. Okay, the Thais for some reason seem to like a lot of, well, not a lot, seem to like sugar in their cooking, in a lot of their taste profiles. Okay. Okay, this tastes about right. So it is just oyster sauce that's been, I guess, that's had like a bit of like water and that sort of stuff added to it to make it like less intense in flavor. And what I'm going to do also is just thicken it up a little bit again with the tapioca starch and a bit of water. Okay. So now I've got a slightly thick sauce here. When I say slightly thick, it's taken out a little bit more than I expected. I'm just going to add a little bit more water to this. Okay, and just break it up again. Okay, now the tofu is done by the looks of it. I'm going to fish it out. I'm just going to try and find something I can put this in. I know when I this is a one chance thing, because if I transfer it into something else after this, it'll probably fall completely apart. Actually, you know what? I'm going to use a smaller bowl. That's the tofu. Just hold it up. You can see it. Okay. It almost looks like a fried egg, but that's that whole block of tofu. And then I'm going to pour the radish and dried shrimp topping over it, and then pour the sauce over everything else. Okay. Okay, it doesn't look like much, but there you go. So tofu with dried shrimp and radish topping and a little bit of oyster sauce over it. And I'm going to take a nice photo, hopefully, so you can get a clearer picture of what it looks like. But the sauce tastes really nice, so I've got high hopes for this. But anyway, thanks guys. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'm going to be posting the recipe online. What I've started to do is concurrently, while this is broadcasting, I'm concurrently recording this off my webcam on my Yoga 900. So I'm going to upload the webcam version. It will be a much higher quality video onto my YouTube channel. So keep an eye out for it in a day or two on my YouTube channel. It's just youtube.com/JackieM. And the recipe will be on my website, which is jackiem.com.au. If you've got any questions at all, post it online on Twitter. You can find me everywhere. And I will try and address that best to my ability. And until tomorrow, I shall see you. Ciao.